So I gave him many opportunities, and we always do this with these murder for hire investigations, to give him an out, to say, listen, you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube once I do this, right? It's done.
Right.
Are you sure this is what you want?
Right.
Once you give me this money,
right,
and I go out there and I walk out of this parking lot or I drive out of here, there's no stopping it.
But are you
sure?
saying that? Are you saying that for legality? Or are you also saying that because it's like, hey, brother, like, is there any part of you that like feels for that guy?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and
there
can
is.
Can you describe that?
So I want to be sure because, and it really, there's very few like 100% evil people in this world.
That's right.
If there's any, right? But I'm sure there's a few, but people get carried away, right? And people get a little out of control sometimes and say things they don't necessarily really mean literally when they're saying it. So yes, I want to be sure that this is his true intention, right? I don't want to jam some dude up who's just had a really tough month, right? And he's down on his luck and I don't want to jam that dude up. I'd rather help that dude. But if his true intention is to hire someone, to kill his wife, I do want to jam him up.
Yeah.
So I got to be sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I want to give him a couple chances to back out.
Yeah. Yeah. And with him, like, didn't he kill his wives before? Didn't two of his other wives wind up dead?
So the one before her they found her in the bathtub in about 7 or 8 inches of water with her upper body above the water. And the autopsy was inconclusive. And, this is South Georgia. He was he was a doctor for the LPGA. He was very well known. It was a good old boy network. And there was no charges.
Yeah.
I mean, she was alone in the house.
Oh, man.
So, this guy was evil.
Yeah.
There was we knew that going into this. So I was pretty sure, even though I gave him those outs, I was pretty sure he was serious about it.
Yeah.
And I knew when he talked to me, the vitriol, the hate that was coming out of him, I knew he meant it.
Yeah.
And it was just bizarre because this guy was a very successful doctor.
Yeah.
And very different from the like psychological profile of most of the guys I'm working on, right? Most of the guys I'm working on are just thugs, right? Like hardcore street gangbangers. This dude's a doctor.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the whole profile is different.
Yeah. Yeah. And what does that tell you sort of about like criminality in the first? I mean, you never know, right?
You never know. I mean, it's out there. It's everywhere. It's in your neighborhood, right? Yeah, we all know it's in the bad neighborhoods, but it's in the good neighborhoods too.
Sure.
Right? It's because it's in all of our hearts, man.
Sure.
It's just who can keep it suppressed.
Sure.
Right?
Sure. So how long is it really like the storefront operations? Like how long before you get, is that you just got to get trust from the department?
Yeah. So once I had kind of a couple years going by, I had kind of proven myself, I started getting the call. And the first call was from Jay Dobbins and Chris Bayless. That was my first call. It was out in...
and those guys were already heroes to you?
Heroes, man. Yeah. So there was 3 of them. There was Jay, Chris Bayless, John Babyface Carr. So Jay had whipped up this incredible case out in Arizona on a home invasion crew. He was buying kilos and bombs and all sorts of stuff. And he brought us in. He told these guys, I got my own crew. We were going to finish with a big home invasion. He said, I got my own crew. He goes, I'm going to bring them in for this. So this gang he's working on said, okay. So Jay said, listen, the bad guys are going to pick you up at the airport. You're enrolled when as you walk off that plane, you're enrolled. So I get off the plane and the bad guys are at the airport, scoop me up. And it was 2 weeks of insanity out there. Because, everything Bird did was over the top and insane. You know what I mean? He had, we bought an RPG from these guys. Like who's selling RPGs out there, right? I mean, these dudes there was no crime they weren't into. So we spent about 2 weeks out there just kind of, feeling out, so they could get to know his crew and we got to know them. And, we bought some guns and some dopes from them, the RPG. Jay had already bought pipe bombs. And so on the last night before the takedown, Jay had arranged for the meeting with the bad guys to be at a strip joint. And he was kind of throwing a bone to the SWAT guys. SWAT guys who cover us, SRT guys, they have the worst gig, right? They're always like up in a tree or right on for hours, you know what I mean? And so Jay's like, hey man, we do it at a strip joint. The boys can get dressed down and cover us, hang out at a strip joint while they're covering us. You know what I mean? So like, okay, cool. But I was kind of the new guy in the mix. So So Bird was like, hey, man, you're going to wear all the recording and monitoring device. So it's Arizona in the summer. So, and back then the Niagara recorder we used was like this big. So I had to put it all in my crotch, right? Because I'm wearing a t-shirt and jeans. So I got all this like in my crotch, as a recording and monitoring equipment. And so Bird sends a stripper over to give me a lap dance to make me even more uncomfortable, right? So I figure, okay, this is how it's going to go. So I asked the girl, I said, hey, what did he give you for this? And she said, $20. I said, well, here's 40. I said, go give him a dance. I said, but he's kind of kinky. I said, when you're done with the dance, I go, give him a little slap in the face.
Yeah.
She goes, okay. So she goes over there, she starts dancing for him. And I swear to God, I got pictures to prove it.
Yeah.
Out of nowhere, she comes up with this Mike Tyson right hook right here in his cheekbone and busts him wide open. I mean, wide open. It was spraying. She was wearing rings. So I'm thinking, I'm sitting there watching this blood spurt out of his face. And all I'm thinking is, my undercover career is over, man. That's the last invite I will ever get. To say he was pissed is an understatement. Because he had to go home and explain to Gwen, to his wife, right? Why his face was busted up from a strip joint. Yeah. So literally the SRT guy is suturing him. I run in the bathroom to apologize. He's getting sutured in the stall of the strip joint bathroom. That's how bad it was.
Wow.
And so I'm like, oh, that's it. I'm done. So we do the take. The takedown goes great the next day. Bird's not saying much to me. And I talked to Chris Bayless. I said, dude, did I just do myself? Is it over? He goes, bro, if we get over these things, it happens. I'll smooth it out. And Chris smoothed it all out and everything was good. And I went on to, thank God, do a whole bunch more and work with those guys all the time.
Sure. Sure.
But I almost blew it all that first time.
Yeah. What is just for people that don't know, like a storefront operation, what does that entail? And I'm really interested in sort of like the street theater of it and how you talk about it.
So the government, we set up a false business, okay? And we don't do it haphazardly, right? We find these areas in town where the gun crime is just out of control.
Yeah.
And, using these statistics, we justify these operations by saying, the shootings, the gun recoveries, in this area. So we're going to open up a storefront operation. We open up a business that we choose and we run this business. It's owned and operated by the government, staffed entirely by undercover agents. We embed ourselves in the community and we start buying guns and drugs. And we target the trigger pullers and the guys who are putting guns on the street. That's who we're targeting. And we use a network of informants sometimes, to help us out, especially to get started. And we just start buying guns. And it is amazing once you get started how these things spider web, right? And once the word gets out, how it spider webs. My hustle was always the same. Sal Nunziato, I was from New York and I would take these guns and you could buy a gun in Georgia for $100. You could sell it on the streets of Brooklyn for $1,500. And that's no bull.
Yeah.
And that was my hustle. And I had moving trucks and we had things set up where we would show them how we would secrete when we got enough guns. Once I got up to like 200 or 300 guns, I would secrete these guns in furniture. We'd have it stuffed with furniture. This is some people's furniture. We're just moving them up north. So, if we get pulled over by Johnny Law, hey man, we're just moving furniture. We don't know. Right. So, and these guys love that.
Yeah.
We would have cigarette master cases and Newports and Marlboros, but the bottom would be hollowed out. So even if you open the box, you could pull cartons out, but underneath it was all guns. We would show these guys this. We would have the traps in our undercover vehicles where you press the air conditioning, you put it to a radio channel, and the back seat opens up, and you can put in 10 kilos or a couple machine guns, whatever. So we would use street theater where we would bring in undercover agents from other areas, and we would do drug and gun deals in front of the bad guys to boost our credibility.
Yeah, can you explain how that you would use them as security and stuff? Like how would that work?
So, and this was my favorite thing to do in these storefront operations. First of all, I would have a team, right? And you would make a team, and I always considered it, it was like the Avengers, right? My undercover team that we would put together. So, you would have all different ethnicities and males, females, and everyone had their skill. You know what I mean? Everyone had their skill. Everyone had their certain thing they were good at. Maybe it was buying pills. Maybe it was buying the NFA weapons, the machine guns, the sawed-off shotguns, whatever it was. but everyone specialized in something, and we would put together that team, and that's who would staff these operations. So what we would do, because who just keeps buying drugs and buying guns? Cops. So you have to show these guys what you're doing with it so they don't start questioning you. That's where street theater came in. So I would call a couple guys from a different office, a couple undercover guys from the undercover program or whoever it may be, and say, hey, can you come in and do some street theater? We're going to do the Mr. Big scenario, right? So I would tell whatever local gang I was working with, whoever was hanging out, I would say, listen, I got some bikers coming in. I don't trust these motherfuckers. I never dealt with them before. You guys mind posting up security for this deal? And they'd be like, that's what we do, right? And I'd say, listen, man, I'll pay you whatever. So we would set up, maybe it would be 20 machine guns, maybe it would be 20 kilos of meth, right? And either I would be selling it or I would be buying. Usually I would be selling it. So me and my crew, we would break 20 real kilos out of evidence, and we'd let the bad guys finger it and everything, the crew before the deal. And here's the dirty part of it. So, well, I'll tell you the dirty part afterward. So the agents would come into town, right? And we don't have this all scripted beforehand. So we'd say, all right, be at the place at 12 o'clock before we open. So the bad guys would show up. I'd tell them where to post. I say, all right, you post up here. You stay with me. You get by the door. Okay, man, we got this. So our guys would call right on my undercover phone, and I'd be like, okay, yeah, you're 10 minutes out? All right, we'll see you then. I'd be like, all right, they're in a white van. They're on the way. So they'd show up, and they see these big gorillas get out, and the bad guys would be like, oh, they're here. And these dudes would come in, and they'd play it super cool, right? However they did it. They might be a little bit confrontational, right? Or they might be dap hugging everybody and all that. And we would do a deal, right? We would just let it flow however the deal went. Like I said, it might be confrontational. We might argue about the money, whatever. But they would show up with a suitcase full of money, right? And I would sell them 20 kilos. They would take it and go. And then I'd give that suitcase of money, or I'd give the suitcase of money they gave me to one of my guys and tell them, take it to the spot, because I never wanted the bad guys that were helping me to think it was there, because they'd come back and rob me later.
Yeah.
So these guys would see that happen, and the word would go out like, oh, these motherfuckers are for real. They are moving. Now, the dirty part is, if they showed up with guns, which they always did, they just bought themselves 5 more years, because they just brought a gun to a narcotics transaction. It doesn't matter that it's a fake narcotics transaction.
Right.
That's federal law.
Right.
So we were not only like using them for this and to spread the word, but we were also tacking 5 years on top of their sentence because they showed up with a gun.
Wow.
Which is dirty. I don't like that when I think about it afterward.
Yeah. Yeah. But part of the deal.
That was part of the deal.
And being in these communities for as long as you were, it's like you're establishing real relationships. And I know you've like talked about specific, and I know like eventually this started to like really weigh on you.
Big time.
And you're bringing so much of yourself. And I think in a way too, one of the things I want to talk about is you're losing a lot, right? Because you're not around the family. And I mean, obviously you got really close with some of the guys that you ended up bringing down. But I mean, even before that, I think that there's this stigma now with like policing in this country, there's like sort of a us and them type mentality. But I imagine you were seeing things in the criminal world. I mean, one, it sounds like you would set up one of these shops and then it would just, and from reading the book, it would just sort of like open up the floodgates of how much criminality was going on. So one, was that a surprise? And two, were there things that you were seeing in this criminal element? Were there things that you were seeing that you respected? Were there things that you were seeing where you were like, you sort of admired either the ingenuity or the intelligence or the loyalty among some of these guys?
Totally.
Can you give me some examples?
So there were some good people coming into those operations. We met some good people. Some good people who were involved in no criminality at all, who were just coming in there. And some of the guys who were out there hustling, selling guns or selling dope, they were good guys.
Yeah.
Right? Men and women. So as far as the success, I was incredibly, from the beginning, the first one I did was a tattoo shop up in Augusta. And 12 months, we ran that for 12 months. We had 430 crime guns we had bought in 12 months. So I never expected that kind of success, the way it went. But we had different gangs coming in, and our big rule was that there was no beefing, right? That was a neutral place, but that didn't last, right? There was fist fights, and we were out there. But we got in so tight with so many of these groups.